Welcome. We formally start this webinar right now. The team may please start recording as well. Friends, welcome to the second of our 4 webinars titled Flourishing in the New Era. A warm welcome to our audience. Good morning to you if you're in the US, afternoon if you're in Europe, evening if you're in India, depending on which part of the world you join in. We are happy you're with us. This particular webinar will explore responsibility of business toward a wide range of stakeholders, including nature, society, future generations. We will discuss how successful intelligence and creativity can be applied in business for serving the common good. And we will open up this area for discussion with our guests as well and ask some questions as to where we are and why are we not getting where we think we should be getting. To do all of this, we have a very, very special guest today. He's none other than Professor László Zsolnai. Is professor and director of the Business Ethics Center at the Corvinus, University of Budapest, chairman of the Business Ethics Faculty Group at the CEMS, the Global Alliance in Management Education in Paris. Professor Zolnai is president of the European SPES Institute in Leuven, Belgium. He has been a guest professor visiting scholar at the University of Cambridge, at the University of Oxford, University of California at Berkeley, Georgetown University, University of Richmond, Concordia University, Montreal, University of St. Gallen, Bocconi University, Milan, and the Netherlands Institute for Advanced Study. He has a website where there's a lot of material available on ethics and the rich work that he has done with a range of scholars, and that website is László-Zsolnai.net, László-Zsolnai.net, and a wealth of material that I personally have also benefited from. And you could go and visit it. My name is Jagdish Rattanani. I'm a faculty member at the SPJIMR Institute of Management and Research, where I teach in the area of ethics, communications, business, and society. With me is Dr. Surya Tahora, who heads the Center for Wisdom at SPJIMR and teaches spirituality-related material and wisdom traditions at our MBA programs. I'll ask Dr. Tahora to say a few words, and then we'll hand over to Professor Zolnai for some opening remarks, and then open this for discussion. Surya, can you please take over from here?
Yes, thank you, Jagdish, and welcome to our guests, and particularly László and Peter, who will be the guests for our, I think, the last session, so in 2 weeks. So I would like just to put into context this series of a webinar by introducing very briefly, I will not take much time, the center, which is seeing its birth since last week with László, with Paul Shiva's talk last week. So if you don't mind, I will share just 2-3 slides and tell you what is this center about. So this center is, of course, situated at the SPJIMR, so in Bombay, in India. What is its vision and its mission? It's really very much in connection with the series of webinars that we are now hosting with our guests, as its vision is really to create and disseminate ideas towards more responsible and sustainable society. Okay, so this is what binds us together. And the idea is to bring together different actors from different spaces, whether it is organization or researchers. We want really to try to bring and have like a fertile here ground for conversation to be able to do that. And the mission of this center is really to become a global transformative platform. Right? One thing obviously is to generate ideas. One thing is to create knowledge, but then we ultimately want to have an impact and on society. And the idea is really we want to be able to design practices at the intersection of East and West, being in the East, but being, let's say, being the Far East and being in between also Europe and having, let's say, connections with US as well. We think that we're, let's say, in a privileged place where we can become that, let's say, kind of hub where these kind of things can happen. What are our objectives? So as I said, one is this platform creation. I would like to emphasize on the multiplicity of partners who are looking at, coming both from corporate. I think this is one of the main actors we want to address, but not the only one. We want also to address the social sector with non-profit organization, the public sector, and also have partners, multiple management schools, research centers and university, as it's shown by the variety of people who are attending, for example, this webinar. Knowledge creation, I would like to emphasize one point, which is the absolute necessity of multidisciplinarity. So we don't want just to be in a space where Western psychology or Western philosophy is, let's say, alone looking at that, because we are like facing a planetary challenge. And what we think in this center, in that we can bring together different disciplines and from different geographies. So different disciplines from neuroscience to Eastern philosophy, from economics to anthropology, and in terms of geography, obviously going from east to west. Okay, practice impact, I have spoken about it, and I will go in these three areas of focus, and I will end by this. What are the three areas of focus we would like to work upon all together? First question, what are the insights and practices that can enrich whatever perspective the research domain, which has really its anchor in the West, what can this Eastern wisdom tradition can bring to this, let's say, space, and particularly for leadership development. So by Eastern tradition, I would include Islam and Sufism, for example. In India, I would include Sikhism, Jainism, obviously all the variety of different, let's say, schools in within Hinduism, Buddhism, which is also very much present here in India. And if we go towards the Far East, go towards Confucianism and Taoism, which are very close from some aspect. I mean, this from this perennial tradition, the perennial wisdom traditions. So this is one area of focus. What can they bring on the table? Then the other area of focus is we are in an age of complexity, of uncertainty, of a planetary challenge. What are the new leadership skills which are required? Have we thought about revisiting the skills required since we have begun to do, for example, for management school, some MBA? Have we revisited the curriculum? And now what is it and how can we develop these skills, taking from different wisdom tradition and nourishing it by research in these domains? And then the last one, which is very interesting, again, across civilization culture, is what can we learn from history? From history in the Indian space or US? I'm sure many people have in mind what has happened recently in US in the category of not so wise leaders. But we can also look at South America, or we can look at the Far East. And there are maybe some exemplars and models we can learn from. So this is, in short, what we are aiming at. And we're very happy and privileged to have this first event that this center is hosting with people of your stature, László, and Peter Present, and also Paul Srivastava and Ella now Ingins will take the next webinar next week. So thanks a lot, and I just leave you the floor, László.
Thank you. Thank you, Surya, for introducing your center. And before starting, I will show you just a very few slides, something food for thought. But before
Rachna can start the slides. Yeah.
Yeah. But before that, okay. Or just okay. If you full screen,
You want me to share now?
Yes, just some minute, because first I would like to say something about my story with India. my personal story with India in this context, just some very few minutes. So my story with India related to spirituality and business started about 20 years ago when I first met Professor Chakraborty in Calcutta at the Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta. As you know, Chakraborty was a leading Indian academics who introduced spirituality and human values in management. And he established his Center for Human Values, the Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta. So that was my first important personal and academic connection and collaboration in India. Also, Chakraborty visited us in Hungary and several times in Europe, and we worked together, published together. Even now, we are working on a book for Springer dedicated to his legacy, the global perspectives on Indian spirituality and management. So this will be published later this year by Springer. More than 40 academics from India, Europe, and US participating in this project. So Chakraborty was certainly a central figure for me in the spirituality and business, spiritual and management context from India. And later on, some 5 years ago, we organized a major international conference in Bangalore together with Madhumita Chaudhary and other friends, Sanjay Mukherjee from Shillong and some others. But in this conference, also, the title was Ethical Leadership, Indian European Approaches. And in this conference, Jagdish Rattanani with Professor Shrikant, who was the dean and the central figure in SPJIMR Institute, so your institute, participated and contributed a very nice paper. So this, I never met Professor Shrikant, your dean, your former dean, your founding dean. I never meet him, but I studied his papers, I watched videos with him, and I studied his life and his vision, and really I was very much impressed. Some months later he died, so I never met him in person. But he is another central figure for me in inspiration, how to introduce spirituality into business school, in a business school setting, how to introduce and integrate spirituality in management and business. So I will stop this, my 20 years story with India, Chakraborty, Calcutta, and Professor Shrikant, and Jagdish and Surya from Bombay. And for me, these two places, Calcutta on the one hand and Bombay on the other hand, represent somehow the wholeness of India. Very different, very distinct approaches, Bombay, Calcutta, but in a way complementary. So we need both, and also a lot more from India. So Professor Chakraborty and Professor Shrikant are my inspiring persons, most important persons from India. And in a way, I would like to dedicate this little talk and this discussion to the memory of both of them. So this is a little personal story. And if you don't mind, I would like to share some slides, just a few slides, and be a little bit provocative. So can you get a full screen?
Start with the slide.
Yeah, thank you very much. So this is, I was asked to speak about responsible business. I'm a business ethics professor, so I teach this for almost 30 years. all over Europe and US, Canada. So very shortly focusing on India. So please the next. Yeah, so this is my central and provocative statement. So I think the major problem with today's business leadership is extremely narrow conception of the self. And based on this extremely narrow conception of the self, a self-centered and self-enhancing oriented way of doing business. So this is what I call self-centered business leadership. And the problem with this is not just the ethically not so nice, but the problem is that this is extremely dangerous and destructive. So this kind of a leadership practice destroy nature, destroy human communities, and also future generations. So I will elaborate on this a little bit, but for me, this is a central problem with today's leadership. So please, the next. I would like to refer to Amartya Sen, your Nobel Prize winning economist, Indian economist, the most famous one, Harvard University. He's also an extremely important person for me, inspiring person. And I think that his conception, his criticism of rationality, economic rationality as a self-interest, maximizing behavior is extremely important. And what he suggests, but he publishes, large volumes on this, and even provides some mathematical proofs that's what's wrong with self-interest maximization. So Sen is arguing that we should abandon this old-fashioned and very dangerous concept of economic rationality, and we should replace it with a much broader, more enlightened conception, what he called reason. Reason. And this is his definition. What is reason? Human reason. Reason is the discipline of subjecting one's choice of action, but also objectives, values, and priorities to reasoned scrutiny. So for me, this is extremely wide-ranging innovation, conceptual innovation by Sen, because he said, I completely agree, that we can criticize not just actions, the choice of actions, but also we can challenge and criticize the objectives, I mean the goals, and also the values, the value background, the priorities, preferences of economic actors. So unlike in mainstream economics, this is also a subject of rational or reasoned scrutiny or rational discussion. So I will show you that this is very, very productive and very inspiring extension of the current concept, what rationality is. So if you can go further, please, the next slide. So that's my suggestion. Economic and business activities should be tested against three basic fundamental criteria. One is ecology, the other is future generations, and the third one is society or pro-socialness. So my argument is, and we can discuss this, that you cannot claim to be rational or reasonable. I mean, your action, policies, values, if you are destroying nature, you are destroying the chances of future generations, and or you are destroying society at large. So we published books on this, but very shortly I will elaborate on this and give you some examples, some positive examples, how these three basic criteria of reason can be satisfied in a creative way, a creative and successful way in business. Can we go further, please? Yeah, this is ecology. Paul Srivastava last week was speaking about this in details. So I would just like to emphasize that reason, also reason, not just responsibility, also reason require us to do things in business and in economic life in a ecologically preserving and regenerative way. Huge literature on this. We can get into details if you need, but my positive examples from India, Europe, and US will illustrate this. This is possible in business. The second one, please. Future generations. So future generations are not just young people. Future generations are not yet born people. People who will be born later, next year or 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 50 years from now, the future India, future Europe, future US or Canada, or so on, so on, so. So how we can respect the interest or the freedom of future generations. So very good, we have very good models about this, how to do that, but certainly it is against reason to destroy the possibilities and the freedom of not yet born people. This might be very provocative, but I would like to defend that. And the next one, please. Pro-Socialness. I think this is more or less self-evident. So also reason require that you should be in business. You should be somehow pro-social. Not just serving people, but something deeper. And this goes back also to Amartya Sen, that somehow you should contribute to the development of capabilities. You know, this capabilities approach, as Amartya Sen, very important, very nice, a deep concept. So business should develop somehow should contribute to develop capabilities of people who are served by their functioning. You can call it more simply way enabling. Business should be enabling people. Also, we have fantastic, nice examples, for example, from France, that companies are able to do this, but also in Bangladesh. So I will give you examples, nice examples. So go further, please. Yeah. So very shortly, responsibility. We teach semester-long courses on responsibility, corporate responsibility, all these kind of things. But in one sentence, I would say that responsibility is basically about caring. But caring for the fate and well-being of your stakeholders, but not just a select list of stakeholders. Okay, mainstream business, mostly shareholders, owners, employees, maybe suppliers, yeah. But the full list of stakeholders, including such primordial stakeholders in nature, future generation, and society at large. So this is an extended set of stakeholders should be considered, and responsibility require this kind of caring attitude, caring behavior, caring action for the well-being. Well-being, also Paul Srivastava emphasized, well-being is not just material welfare. Well-being is really a holistic concept, material and non-material aspects, including ethics and spirituality, culture, all this kind of thing, and integrating the material and the non-material. So this is responsibility. So simply speaking, I would say, you are responsible in business if you develop your actions and policies in a way that you can achieve your goals, the goals of your company, your community, in an ecological, future respecting and pro-social way. This is a high ideal of responsibility, but we will see how it works or can work in business, in real life. Can we go further? So I selected 3 prime examples for you. One from India, one from Europe, and one from the US. This is my favorite business example from India. This is Organic India. You will get the slides if you are interested. So just clicking on the logo of the company, you can get into a nice video about this fantastic business and fantastic experience in Lucknow, Uttar Pradesh. So I will not show the video now because there is no time to do that. You can do it later for yourself. But Organic India is a very successful company. She's specializing on producing organic spices and organic products, agriculture products, but in a way that it's not just really extremely pro-social. Fairness, community development, beyond the market, they pay beyond market the wages and all these kind of things. That's nice, very social, very ethical. But my point is that they are able to improve the ecology, the quality of the soil. Quality of the soil. So their impact on nature is positive, not negative, positive. I don't want to, but you understand the importance of soil, the soil. The soil is almost a living entity, the most important or one of the most important assets, natural assets what we have. In agriculture, if you can improve the quality, regenerate the soil, that's extremely, extremely important. That's crucial. And these people are very, very creative in developing new business models and helping not just very poor people and communities, but regenerating the soil of India, at least in that part of India. So I suggest to study this company. We published case studies about them and fantastic people, very spiritually motivated people. We can go back to this later on in a discussion. Go further, please, and I stop soon. That's Netherlands, Holland. We have a guest from Netherlands. I live there, so I know the country, not just Belgium, also Holland, and I know this bank very well. This is the Triodos Bank in Holland, and this bank is the pioneer in called values-based banking, ethical and sustainability banking, and their operating principle is that something similar to the well-known triple bottom line, but more serious. So they screen, basically speaking, they screen every investment opportunity simultaneously in 3 criteria, according to 3 criteria. One is ecology, one is ethics and social aspect, and third is of course, because it's a commercial bank, is finance. But they are able to do this in a very integral way, and they are extremely successful, extremely successful. So I know that their problem these days is that much more people would like to give their money into the bank than they can invest on the other side. So the sustainable, ethical, social investment opportunities are the critical factor. And for this, they should limit accepting money from people, because they don't want to make compromise on their core values, basic values. So this for me, this is a very convincing. I graduated in finance, so I'm interested in finance. So this is a bank which they say that make your money, make a difference. So banking with good conscience. And we know that in the last 30 years, they financed, I mean the Triodos Bank, they financed 40,000 sustainability and social regenerative project in Holland. 40,000 is more than the government of Netherlands did. That's a commercial bank. So please go to the last example. This is from the US. Very famous, well known in literature, the Interface Corporation in the US, Ray Anderson, former CEO and the leader of this enormous transformation of the company into a truly sustainable and ecologically focused company, well published. So we have a lot of case studies about this. I think also Harvard Business School, there is a case studies on interface as a successful transformation. But the basic idea behind this is that this is a company which is producing carpets mostly for offices, but also for homes, so families. The carpets, they redefine the product. They redefine the product into a service and developed a new business philosophy, how to provide this kind of a not product-based but service-based thing. But that's it. But in the last 20-25 years, they transformed themselves into a net positive ecological impact company. This is extremely difficult, and Ray Anderson emphasizes many times, because they are working in an industry, actually inorganic chemistry, related to inorganic chemistry. So if you are in inorganic chemistry industry, to be fully ecological is almost impossible. They did it. It's a fantastic story, and maybe we can go back to his case, Ray Anderson case, in the discussion, because he also, there is a video. If you click on this, also on Triodos Bank, if you click on a picture, you get the very nice video about the story. We can go back to his motivation, his personal motivation. And please, the next one, and I will stop. So, very simply, I would like to provide you with a checklist about rationality and responsibility of your own business, or anyway, your own activities. And I would suggest to consider three questions. The first question is that your action policy really serve the common good of nature, society, future generation, or not, or just destroying these fundamental, non-substitutable beings or assets or stakeholders. So this is one thing. The second thing, much closer to business operations, is that your actions and policies really serve the interest of your business in a broad sense, and convergently your multiple stakeholders. or as we have mostly in this time, you are producing a major trade-off between these two, your business and your stakeholders. So you should think about this and reflect on that. And that finally, maybe most importantly, your actions and policies really serve the development of your own self or not. And your own self in short and in long-term perspective. So your business activities is helping the flourishing of yourself or actually destroying yourself. So the last one is just our book. Can we get the last one? Yes. We will provide you with some reading if you are interested. This is our book at Belgium, London, Ethical Leadership, Indian and European Spiritual Approaches, that I edited with Madhumita Chaudhary of Bangalore. This is a Bangalore book, and this is where Professor Shrikant and Professor Jagdish Rattanani contributed a very nice paper. So I will stop here and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor László. That was really lovely. I think we can open the floor to questions, but I will set the ball rolling if I can. Surya, if that's okay. And I love the examples that you've given and the way you have laid out the framework. 3 simple points, a very easy checklist. But I want to step back a little, if you allow me, and go into the heart and mind of some of our participants, our MBA students who come into our courses and who have a very different kind of an ambition or an aspiration, and aspiration in a world, let us not forget, where we have leadership of the Trump kind, if I may use that word. So the high markers that we are seeing are of a variety. And this seems to be so much in the air. Okay? This seems to be so much embedded into the very idea of business, which is, loosely speaking, utility maximization, efficiency paradigms, extractive ways of working. And we see it in the vast universe. And I do see good examples. I see them far few and far in between. So from this mindset, if this MBA is going to join the company that is going to do something very different, how do I enter into the mind and space of this young participant and suggest to him or her that there is something happening that they may not be alert to? How do you respond to this conundrum of a majority doing something and minor spaces evolving and going up to saying, hey, this is wrong, but the eyes are focused on the vast majority? Some reflections will help me.
Yes. This is typically questions in business school classes, what we teach in very different countries, including Milano.
A little louder, Professor László. Little louder, if you can.
Yes. So this is a very relevant and typical questions in business schools where we teach all over Europe and beyond. So I have a different kind of answers to this. So first of all, I always suggest and propose to my students that try to so I suggest the entrepreneurial startup models to consider. So there are several really doable and rewarding career paths for young business school students, future business managers. And based on my experience and knowledge and data, everything, I suggest to young people, if possible, try to follow the entrepreneurial startup track and not necessarily to join a big mainstream business, because you cannot do too much in mainstream business context. Maybe I am too radical, but that's my suggestion. That's my conclusion after 30 years of teaching and trying introduce business ethics everywhere. So it's more promising strategy to do something different and not in the mainstream sector. If a young talented students, gifted students want to join a mainstream, especially a big multinational corporation, his or her possibilities in making a difference is much less, much more limited than entering into the entrepreneurial track and to do something really meaningful, original, creative. So this is my first answer. I'm just a professor. I suggest this. You can do whatever you want, but it's better to try to follow this track and not that track. So that's my general advice to the students and to anybody. So I believe in entrepreneurship in a broad sense. In a broad sense, I believe in individual actions. Maybe I too much believe in that, but sorry, but you will understand. I learned, for example, this from Gandhi. From Gandhi, who was not a businessman, of course. So, but he was extremely ethically oriented and creative acting person in politics. So you can make fundamental innovations alone, starting alone. So this kind of a positive, I would call it a positive individualism, but I try to promote individual as not in terms of ethics, but individual focused in terms of action. So you can initiate, that's my general answer. That's a different question. How can we try to reform mainstream business practices? That's another very important topic for a discussion, but it's not necessarily the question for a young future manager to that this one or that one. So that's my personal advice. So this is a strategy choice. And okay, I stop, but we can discuss later further that how we can respond to young people in business schools who would like to be rich, enormously rich, as soon as possible. That's a challenge. That's a challenge. So I have some response to that, but yeah, that's my first reaction.
Yeah, you had Professor László, a participant, I think from Italy or somewhere, who asked you this question: how soon can I get my Ferrari? Is that correct?
Yeah.
This actually happened.
Yes, that's happened in Milano, and you know Milano. It's Milano Alto. As extremely rich and also beautiful place. It's really happened that an MBA student said when we discussed the what's your main goal in life, and he said that to get a Ferrari as soon as possible. I never forget this story, because you know Ferrari is a symbol. You know, is a symbol of everything we are against. I'm against. Ferrari, if I am I'm correct, if I know this correctly, it's 1 million, roughly 1 million euros or US dollars. It's 1 million, it's one car. But also is a symbol of ecological destructiveness. Even if we have some cars, of course, maybe I don't have a car. I live my life without a car. Even I lived without a car in California. So, but if you need a car, it's certainly not a Ferrari. Ferrari is a symbol of anti-ecological, anti-social everything. So if you want to get a Ferrari as a main goal of your life, that's a serious problem with you. That's a serious problem with you. And if we can discuss this, so I don't want to enter this, but this is a fantastic story. But I'm not a psychologist, but a psychologist would say that if you need a Ferrari in such a way, I think about what you really need, because probably you need actually in his case, you need a nice, loving, caring partner, a lady, and you think you need a Ferrari in order to get a lady, but in this way you will not get that lady at all. I'm sure. I can assure you. Maybe you can get such a lady in a different way, not with a Ferrari, not because of social status and a lot of money. No, try something different. So, but also Surya and also Peter Prus and others to help students to reflect on them, on their own self and wishes, and go back. Wait a minute, go back to Amartya Sen. Reason. Because she said not just the choice of actions, but also values, priorities, and actually wishes, desires should be a subject of rational, even public discussion. So I stop, but I would say to the students of this kind, look, think about this twice or three times. Actually, is not a rational, not a reasonable thing to desire. The rationality of desire, which is a taboo in mainstream economics, because consumer sovereignty, all these kind of things. The rationality of desire is extremely important, ethical. It's a public issue. It's a public issue. It's not your own thing. So please try to wish to get something else. I know that this is not enough, but so that was, I never forget this story. A Ferrari. Wish something else. Wish something else. But certainly we should debate.
Yeah.
We should debate.
Surya? You're mute.
Yeah. I was wondering about one thing, László, about this self-centered leadership that you are describing. And I know in one of the articles that you wrote, you are speaking about one amazing, I mean, very surprising phenomena, which Bondurant has called this moral disengagement. And just as a small, let's say, introduction to that, what you say is that even when leaders, they break the rules and enter in an unethical space in business or politics or whatever, what is amazing is that they don't feel, any guilt. They don't feel that it will hurt anybody. They consider it as absolutely genuine and normal to do what they do. they don't feel obliged to say, to make reparation or restore, as you were speaking about restoration, regenerating communities or soil or whatever. They don't feel in short any inner split or conflict. So when I read that, I was like, how is it possible? So how does it happen, László? And how from there, I mean, these kind of people, you can move them to some motivation, like the motivation which were like inspiring Organic India people or this bank that you're speaking about. How do you move them?
Yes. So you were referring to this moral disengagement
Yes,
theory of Albert
Bondurant.
Bandura, Stanford University.
Yes,
He's just for the others, that Bandura is the most cited psychologist ever, with more than 500,000 citations. But that's just the thing. Really is one of the most important psychologists ever. And his theory is really shocking. It's really shocking, as Surya recalled, because it's really the case. And also, I am working with him, and we apply this theory to business people. This is really widespread in the corporate world, that leaders can, simply speaking, can manipulate themselves, they cheat themselves almost in an infinite way, infinite. So they develop, and Bandura analyzed, as a top psychologist, so 8 different strategies how to fool yourself, how to manipulate yourself. But it is possible. It is possible. And the bad news is that somehow this is, so you can live with this for a very long period of time, almost forever. But there are some also good news, but just to follow the bad news first. Because also Bandura started to study the Nazi German leaders' personalities. And what he found is was some Eichmann personality, so or a Hitler, and you will understand this. So they really deeply felt that they served the interest of German people. So unfortunately, psychologically, this is possible. So it's a very, very long story, extremely well documented. But I would, because we have just very limited time, I would recall to a positive aspect, because there are some new experimental results in psychology, that spirituality can help, and not because we would like to have these results. It's really the case. So experimental studies suggest that spiritually oriented business people less likely to enter into these self-manipulative moral disengagement strategies than less spiritually oriented, I mean, more materialistically oriented persons. So this is an extremely important finding, because it shows that moral disengagement is very closely related to a materialistic, individualistic mindset. This is empirical result. And so one way is to how to say that, not just use spirituality, but open the space for the spirit. And this can help. This can help. But also with Bondurant, we developed some more down-to-earth, in a way, materialistic solutions or mechanism which can help, not just spirituality. So just to mention and stop, of course, the more classical, conventional business ethics solutions can help a bit, at least. For example, accountability, a public accountability of companies and leaders, or transparency, but it also goes back to Amartya Sen, that that publicity, the public opinion, the public pressure on corporate leaders really is a precondition of developing a more ethical or less morally disengaging or disengaged practices. So it's an enormously important field, practically and also scientifically, but there is some hope, but the situation is much more difficult than we could imagine.
Yeah.
So the forces of dark forces, I would say, dark forces are also well organized within us, not just outside, within is almost is possible to live with this kind of moral disengagement forever. Think about Stalin or other mass criminals in Asia, in Cambodia, for example. Unfortunately, this is psychologically possible.
Yeah. László, thanks. I know it's a difficult question, and we're touching about how at an individual level you can shift and grow and develop yourself. And but let's shift to another point, if you allow me, which is, you said maybe one of the mechanisms could be to develop accountability. And I'm sure you read recently, a few months ago, there was an attempt by at Davos to develop some metrics of the stakeholder capitalism metrics, right? I'm sure you have heard about that. And then it was taken to be operationalized by these big consulting companies and so on. So my question will be, how is this stakeholder, let's say, metrics, stakeholder capitalism metrics, how is it different from your checklist that you have, let's say, presented at the end just a few minutes ago?
Yeah, I think the base, there are some very important differences, but the main thing is that without deep personal ethical motivation of leaders and other managers, we cannot do anything. We cannot do anything really meaningful and important. So we studied with Luc Burkhardt and others, there's the so-called the paradox of ethics in management. So the ethics management paradox. And also, sorry to say that opportunistic use of ethics and the stakeholder capitalism is something like that, more or less. The opportunistic use of ethics and stakeholder considerations because this will increase your profit or whatever, it doesn't work. Sometimes, we studied this for 20, 25 years, this kind of a CSR paradox. And sometimes, this is not just misusing the concept and the mission of ethics, but that's okay, forget it. But it doesn't work in practical sense. So the paradox says that if you want to use ethics for the sake of increasing profitability and all this kind of business financial results, you will fail. You will fail.
Ah.
There are important financial and economic benefits of ethical way of doing business. There are, but there are preconditions, and one important precondition is the commitment, the really, truly genuine commitment based on intrinsic motivation, not extrinsic motivation. So it looks like something highly idealistic, but it's not. It's very practical. I advise to many companies, if you are not really truly committed to ethics, it's better not to do anything with ethics. If I can use an example from medical science, maybe it's a good example. So you can misuse or you can use inadequately a very good, effective medicine or medical operation or medical system. So the system is good, the medicine is good, the operation is good, but if you not use it in an adequate, appropriate, genuine way, there will be enormous negative effects. So it's better not to do it if you cannot use it, if you cannot do it in a proper, genuine way. So really, it's my advice to mainstream companies, just forget ethics altogether. You can be better off without ethics than with an opportunistic, misused ethics, because you will suffer major social, even financial consequences. The whole story of a corporate social responsibility movement in Europe clearly indicate that. So it's a choice. It's a choice. So we should be realistic, and if ethics is not for you, it's better not to try. I am too black and white in this, so I have a more nuanced and closer to life position. But this is basically the learning. And just a very recent study, I mean, so recent that some days ago was published by Norwegian researchers on the benefit, economic and business benefit of sustainability innovations. And I just, in one sentence, I just recall the main finding, because that's fantastic. So they analyzed more than 100 well-documented studies all over the world. This is in medical science called evidence-based. And their finding is that sustainability innovation, also I would suggest ethical innovations, have three major benefits. Okay, not necessarily increased profit. Let's forget this, not that. More important things, more important than profit. So one thing is that that's evidence-based. Okay, one thing is that this increase value creation, okay, is not the same as profit. Value creation. Second, that's the most important thing, that's where ethics comes in. It's considerably increase the access to non-financial assets. Okay, non-financial assets, reputation, ethics, all these kind of things. Intangible assets, extremely critical even these days for survival and success of business. Access to non-financial assets. And the third thing, which is more conventional, it's really reduced cost. But if your goal is just to increase profit, in a short term, like to get a Ferrari as soon as possible, forget sustainability innovation, forget ethics, forget this kind of thing. Do other things. And we will see how successful or unsuccessful you will be. Ray Anderson, Interface, he started his journey with a realization. He said that, really his words, if we continue this, we will be jailed. We will be in a jail soon. He said that. And from this, he transformed his own mindset and started to transform his company in a fantastic, successful way. So there are major benefits of ethics under certain conditions. So ethics is not necessarily good for you if you are not convinced and not engaged and not genuinely committed to that.
Thank you, László.
Thank you. Yeah, Professor László, there is a chat in our box here that says, can you please post the reference to the study from Norway on the benefits of sustainability, the one that you discussed?
I will share this with you. Even it's open access.
Yes.
It's an open access publication. So
and we will mail it to all the participants.
Yes. That's a fascinating.
Philip Nierberg has asked.
Is a fantastic, fantastic research from Trondheim, the top university in Trondheim in Norway, because this is really provides a very extensive evidence about the benefits what we can have and the lack of benefits.
Correct.
The benefits what we cannot have in this way.
Correct.
For me as an ethicist, non-financial assets are the most important benefits, because working with banks in the US, also in Europe, their major problem is how to re-establish trust. We need trust in business, especially in banking. But if you want to generate trust or rebuild trust, you should do a lot of things beyond your economic and financial self-interest. So you cannot establish trust in an opportunistic way. This is impossible. And people in high-level banking, yes, this is my colleague from Budapest, András Ocsai. He posted the reference to the paper, but we also will share the paper with you if you are interested. So how to generate trust? There are certain ways to generate trust, but these are non-self-interested actions and policies. So I have some good advice to high-level bankers how to generate trust, but they will not like that.
Yes. We have, László, thank you. We have Paul has raised his hand. Paul, would you like to come in with some remarks? And the floor is open for questions, if I may add that. Paul?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, we can.
Sorry, I'm taking my morning walk. So thank you, László, for a really excellent talk. I agree with everything that you have sort of said normatively, where we should be headed and the importance of ethics and reason and the examples of companies. And Peter Blom, who's a colleague of mine at the Club of Rome, explained how he created Triodos Bank. And I think these are examples we should all be following. But as Surya's question pointed out, we are not doing it. The mainstream is still in the old model, and we need to transform the mainstream. So my question is, how do business schools and people who are responsible for curriculum who continue to teach the old stuff. And what is the role of curriculum design and business schools? What is the responsibility? What's the ethical thing to do from a business school perspective? And a connected question is, can't we change some of this behavior through regulation, by government policy and through laws? Because I think if we leave it to individual managers and to students, we are never going to get transformation in the time frame that we need it. So the role of business schools and the role of regulation and law to change capitalism and make it more ethical rather than just letting it voluntarily move towards it. Thank you.
So I see the difficulties in business schools, but I believe in business education, and we are doing this in the last 35 years. So I see a lot of creative space and opportunity in business schools to introduce this new mindset. But my experience is that we should find the most appropriate way to do it. And one possible promising way to introduce this concept, unlike in the past, is not simply teaching ethics or sustainability or ecology or this kind of subjects, but something more integrated, new concept and new courses. One of these, as Paul, you know very well, one of these is sustainable value creation. So for me, this conception and this track is really seems to be promising. Sustainable value creation, because value creation is a language what the business people can understand. And so this is one thing. Also, we have some effort, also Paul knows this, in Concordia, in other places, how to introduce this into finance. And sustainable finance is a way which generates a lot of interest among the students to connect sustainability and ethics with finance in a creative way. New products, new financial products, new financial instruments, new financial working models. So this is another way in which I see some potential. And also this what Surya and other people in Europe represent, this personal development and development of the self, this kind of thing. So really, I see a lot of opportunities, and I know that this is not easy because the mainstream is even stronger in business schools than in the business world. So somehow business schools are behind the business world. But we try to connect ourselves to the most progressive business people, business models, business experiences. The other question, Paul, is the institutions. And I completely agree. We need new institutions which support this transition. But really, this is not my field. And really, it's my personal bias that I don't believe in politicians. It's too much to say, I know, but so I believe more in business people, in creative business people, creative individuals, entrepreneurs, young people, than in politicians. But we do need new institutions. I wish that other people have creative, engaged ideas how to develop new institutions, but I focus on individual actions. Individual actions because I believe one person can change the world, really, like Gandhi. We need tens of thousands of little Gandhis in business, not just in India, but also in Europe and US and other parts of the world. Little fantastic creative Gandhis. And if I can use one example, of course, the Indians knows this very well, that the most, for me, the most creative act of Gandhi, real innovation in politics, was the so-called salt march of Gandhi. He developed a completely radically new form of doing politics with his salt march. So I see this as an innovation, a political, fantastic, ethical innovation. So we need this kind of breakthrough innovations in business, like a salt march of Gandhi was many years ago. But I believe in human spirit and creativity much more than in institutions. So I am probably wrong. We need both. We need both supportive institutions, but we need more personal creativity and courage.
Thank you. Professor László, the floor is open for questions if there are any. I'd be very happy to take any. But meanwhile, can I ask you, Professor László, to reflect? So we have spoken of reason as the discipline of subjecting one's choice to action, reason scrutiny so that we can look at objectives, values, priorities using Amartya Sen's writings. And I want to suggest, is it or is it not a part of the problem that too much dependence on reason, does not allow me to see anything beyond myself? Because reason tells me that I am separate from you. And I somehow seem to think, and I would look for guidance from you, from Peter, from others, on my separateness as being at the root of what we see happening in the world. And the more I reason, the more I am actually granting concessions to the other rather than immersing in the other. And then wherever I go for concessions, somewhere the concessions will stop. And I go back to a model of looking at myself. And I seem to think, therefore, the more smarter we get, the less wiser we become. And somewhere there seems to be some idea that we may need to play with. And for young audiences, that there's a gate of reason stops somewhere where we have to let go and say, in me is you, therefore when the separateness goes, the problem goes. I wonder how you might, or anybody else on this panel might wish to reflect and probably offer some comments on this.
Yeah, I agree. What we need is a combination of the heart and the mind. So we need a combination of the heart and the mind. In more academically speaking, we need a combination, and also we need a creative combination of rationality or reason and spirituality, a non-rational faculty. But what I would like to emphasize, probably Amartya Sen would not agree with this, but okay. So rationality is not against spirituality. That's a very, very important. In the European tradition, this is our tradition. As Thomas Aquinas, one of our greatest philosophers in Christianity very strongly argued for this. So, but without Aquinas or without Christianity, rationality or reason is not against spirituality. We are working on this in Leuven, Luc Böckhardt, European SPES, also in Oxford. But rationality against materialism. So the opposite of spirituality is not rationality. The opposite of spirituality is materialism. That's extremely important. And this is also Amartya Sen. We should not combine rationality with materialism. So this is also Peter Pruzan published very nice papers on this in Science and about science and spirituality. How this marriage in Europe, especially in Europe, the marriage between materialism and rationality happened. It's not necessarily unity. So we can have rationality without this kind of a strict materialism. But we need a marriage of spirituality and rationality, the heart and the mind. So that's what I suggest. We need very clever, also business school, very clever guys with a good heart, simply speaking. If we have this, problem solved. Good heart, clever mind together. There is a...
Surya, you have some comments? Yeah.
Also in the chat, yeah, Surya, go ahead.
In the chat.
I would like to give the floor to the chat. There is a message from Philip.
Yeah.
So would you read it, Philip?
Yes, I will. Despite this well-founded criticism of politics, is anyone here aware of scholars that focus on investigating the role of politicians and specifically innovative economic policy approaches that can lead us to a, let me scroll down, to a better world? I believe one key challenge is that economic policy is almost exclusively informed by neoclassical economics, which is absolutely correct. Any input on this would be much appreciated. We cannot deny that the dominating model is neoclassical economics. We live it, we breathe it, we teach it, we transact it. And what is if that doesn't change, then what changes? Professor László, you're also a professor of economics.
Yes. So what I can, answering to the question, that's not my field, but what I can suggest, at London School of in London at UCL, University College London, top 10 school, top 10 university in the world. The Mazzucato, Professor Mazzucato is a female Italian economist, very influential in Europe, also in Brussels, EU. She is a leader of this kind of rethinking of economics and politics at the macro level, suggesting, but this is somehow a revolution in economic thinking, that economic policy is really should serve the common good. It really should be public. Seemingly it is public, but it should be real public, serving the common, the commons, the commonness, the common good, all this kind of thing. So if you are interested in this kind of a high-level economics and politics, so Mazzucato is certainly a fantastic pioneer, but she is really very influential in Europe, also in Brussels. So the European politics, it seems to me, is really changing from a more individualistic focus to a more commonality or commonness focus. So yeah, we have some links with her, but so Mazzucato is a leading person in this revolution or this transformation in economics and politics, but certainly is not my interest. I am not competent in that. And, yeah.
Sure. Surya?
Yeah, I think we can take maybe one more question from the audience as you are approaching the time now. Anybody would like to ask a question to Professor László? Otherwise, we will ask. We would be delighted to ask more questions, but I would like to leave the floor to the participants.
Yes.
Absolutely correct.
So if no, because we will continue this dialogue next week with Eleanor Higgins and 2 weeks from now with Peter Pruzan.
Yes.
And so I think I would like just to say one closing sentence and stop.
Before you do that, Professor László, I wanted to ask you, if I can, what impact do you think the pandemic is having or will have? It's too early to say on the systems, the economic systems, on the way ethics is practiced in the world as we go ahead. We have seen change of a kind that none of us in our living memory have. What do you think this is going to lead us to in the idea of flourishing in the new era, which is what we are discussing here?
Yes.
And responsible leadership.
Yes. Certainly I don't have the answer to this. But I suggest to reframe the problem, reframe the question. Because from Socrates, early on, from Socrates in Europe, who was a founder of ethics and the ethical tradition of Europe, and a very similar personality 2,500 years earlier than Gandhi. But these two, very similar in the sense that insistence on truth, that's the basic thing. Or Socrates, 2,500 years ago in Greece, and Gandhi in your time, or in our time in a way. So these are foundational persons, but related to this question, because I think both of them would suggest that flourishing in life, the major precondition in flourishing in life is the insistence on truth. Some deep connection with your inner self. In Socrates, that was your conscience, your daimon, and later on Aristotle developed this theory of eudaimonia. This is happiness. So flourishing, happiness, related to connection with your daimon, your conscience daimon. For Gandhi, in a different way, but I think Gandhi would say, or actually said, that the greatest happiness is living in truth and acting for truth. So I just would wish and encourage everybody, my students here, your students in India, in what we are doing in Princeton and other places in Oxford, that try to be honest to yourself. Try to develop this non-negotiable insistence on truth, and you will be happy. This is the main finding of European philosophy, the greatest philosopher, Aristotle. And this is, I think, the main message of Buddhism, in a way. and Hinduism. So we have a lot in common: European tradition, Indian tradition, the truth, existence of truth. So, but we are in business, and I expect, I hope, your creativity. I trust in your creativity to develop new business models, new way of doing business. And actually, and I stop, I have some students, not just in Hungary, but also in Italy and other countries, who actually develop fantastic things in business. Not too many, just few, but one person can change the world. One person can make a real difference. And that one person can be any of you, any of you. So as we know in the European spiritual tradition, I don't know the right translation of this, but it says that it actually a Bible. It says that the spirit can flow can operate whenever he or she, I will translate, wants. You cannot predict the working of the spirit in you, in society. So I trust in individual initiatives and encourage all of the students and us, younger and older people, in business, in politics, in art, every field, to do something really unique, original, and innovative. I think 2:00. Thank you.
Wonderful. I think that's lovely, lovely. What a pleasure, Professor László, having you. We are 18:35, so we have crossed the time of the session. I can't tell you how enriching this has been. And Professor László started with the story of Bangalore, where this conference took place, where I was there. That is the first time I met Professor László. I met Peter Pruzan there for the first time. And it's amazing how small meetings, those were not meetings for a very long time. I think I did not know where they were staying. We just met at the conference. And I think something really touched me on the depth with which we were talking at that conference. These visitors from a faraway continent were speaking a language that I could relate to immediately. And I've always wanted, actually, for the audience here to connect again with Professor László. It has not happened. Thanks to Surya and his center, we have managed to do this. Thanks to Professor László for agreeing to do this and coming on board. We have sometimes fallen short in terms of what happened the last time, and you couldn't get in. My apologies, but we have fixed everything, and we look forward to thank you for today. We look forward to 2 more of these sessions, and I think we would like to build on this. These conversations will be ongoing, and we'll try and explore other platforms where we can keep going and building on this bit by bit. Professor László, thank you so much. I'll hand over to Surya. He will say a few words, and then we will close, if that's okay.
I will not say much. I will just thank again all of you. And I noticed that today we have László, we have Peter, we had Paul. I think he's on his walk now. And we have also Eleanor. So it's amazing. This is what I love in this community, that is like getting form of people who can, let's say, delve deeply into some subject, exchange, and hopefully make something change, and maybe, as László says, inspire one person to do something differently, right? So wonderful. Namaste from Bombay. And see you very soon next week.
It has been a very nourishing session. Thank you, Professor László. I can't thank you enough. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, all the others who have been with us. Thank you for the questions that came. Thank you.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.